Hey guys, I have just submitted my entry for Clint's latest competition called Rampage Rally. In this video, I will break down the thinking behind the competition entry. So, I decided to explore an idea that I've been wanting to explore for over a year now. Because last year I visited a friend of mine who lives in Germany, who is a very skilled paraglider pilot and who was able to take me flying with him. And we spent the evenings after discussing all the kind of wild possibilities that paragliding allows for. And how paragliding works, for those who don't know, is that you're obviously slowly descending because of gravity, but then you find hotspots of warm air pushing you up. And so if you're skilled enough to find all those hotspots, you're actually able to travel very, very far and might even land at around the same altitude that you took off from. So what these paragliders do is that they land on mountains where they pitch their tent and have dinner, and the next morning they carry on. And so people can go flying for days or even weeks and cross the entire Alps or even cross all of Germany. Me being a fantasy world builder, I thought this was extremely inspiring. And I immediately started thinking, would it be possible for an ancient culture to use paragliders? The stone, they leave ancient monuments, such as the Roman aqueducts or the Pyramid of Giza, whereas fabrics or textiles, they deteriorate, and so they don't leave any traces. And so my thinking is that maybe there were civilizations who were solely based on textiles rather than masonry or even metallurgy as the ones that we are more familiar with. Because I read this book recently about the history of textile production. Textiles were extremely technological. So for instance, the Mongols and their ancestors, the Scythians, they were able to conquer such vast amounts of land due to their yurts, which are felt huts, that they would be able to travel with them on horseback. So with all this in mind, it's now time to try to package all these thoughts into 6 seconds, which is the competition entry. The first thing is obviously the character, who is a paraglider, of course. He is a paragliding hunter. He's an extremely skilled one. He's able to, in one fluid motion, draw the arrow, aim and fire, hitting the target, and even swooping back down and grabbing the rabbit. Then about the background. I was inspired by the artist Roger Dean, who is a British illustrator and painter. He's got this kind of psychedelic landscapes with very vivid colors. The shapes of the mountains feels very alien and maybe Eastern as well. I found these assets that looked like the Yellow Mountain in China, these very, very steep cliffs, which I thought would really sell the idea that these people really live only on the very tops of these mountains. I added all these tents, both sitting on the cliffs, but more interestingly, the ones hanging off the cliff. That is actually inspired by mountain climbers who do very long mountain climbs. They actually bring tents and they sleep on the side of the mountains. So I was sort of enlarging those, imagining almost a city on the side of a mountain. Additionally, I imagine these people are masters of anything related to wind. And so they would use windmills in order to pump up water up into the mountains. Also, instead of flags, I placed these windsocks, which is a way of measuring the wind speed, so that anywhere the paragliders are flying, they can always tell how strong the wind is. And then as for the costume of the character, I found an old hard drive recently with all my files from like 10 years ago, actually old Blender files from the time I was creating modifications for Skyrim. And so I found this armor that I always really, really liked, that I'd put together from a couple of different assets. And so I actually brought that in and retextured it. I added this like bright stripy pattern. I had originally intended to have very intricate textiles, sort of silky flowing textiles. It just became too visually dense, the entire scene. So I thought instead of doing any kind of like fine woven patterns, I instead just went for this very graphic stripy pattern. It read much better as a whole. Also the paraglider had this like red and white stripy pattern, which I took inspiration from Viking ships actually. So in the end he looked more like a kind of flying Viking than anything. I hope you enjoyed this video. I tried to have a bit of a different format this time, showing my face for the first time and trying to be a bit more loose with the editing. So I hope you liked it, and please like and subscribe if you're interested in this sort of content, and I hope to see you next time.